for small people. Hello. So my name is HoneyTree, EvilEye, but in my muggle life, my name is Dr. Timmery Schmidt. I'm a fan of you as well. My PhD is in human sexuality. Yes, that is an actual thing. And today I'm going to talk to you about the history of how Western science has described sexual orientation. Very specific. So I'm going to start with the question, and this is real. When were heterosexuals invented?
The Bible!
1800!
1870.
There's the correct answer. It's 1868. This is Carl Maria Kirkpanig, and he lived in Prussia, which was also a real place. And he coined the terms homosexual and heterosexual. And when he presented these ideas, it was this is the natural state of a person, and both of those things were equally valid, and he was doing so in contrast to paragraph 175 of the Prussian laws, which later became Germany. So you know what happened to paragraph 175, don't you? That was used to justify killing gay people. We remember the Nazis, right? We remember the Nazis. But then people talk about, so homosexuality, right? Like, ancient Greece was cool with homosexuality. No! They would have been like, what are you talking about? I understand these concepts. That's some shit they're doing over in Sparta. But the idea that you choose your sexual partners based on your desire is relatively new. Instead, it's always been about social rules. This is a picture of feudal Japan, where a similar setup to what they had in ancient Greece of pederasty was also happening at a similar way. Havelock Ellis was the first person to study sexual orientation in a scientific way. He came up with the idea of sexual inversion, that some people are just built to prefer someone of the same sex. And then we get Magnus Hirschfeld, who formed the Scientific Humanitarian Committee, is one of the first gay and trans rights activists that we know in Western culture. And then we get to the first person who actually asked the question, what are people up to? So Alfred Kinsey, researcher out of Indiana, started actually asking people, what are you up to? And measuring it. And what they discovered is that it was much more interesting than you might have suspected. And they came up with this! So if you've never seen a Kinsey scale before, and this is a measure of whether your sexual activity is exclusively heterosexual or exclusively homosexual, and what he found is that the vast majority of people are right over there. But, however, this doesn't even really fully capture being a person, right? Have you had all the sex you ever wanted to have?
No.
Have you ever had sex that you weren't really excited about? So that means your orientation, your behavior, and your identity may or may not be the same thing. So we have to start coming up with models that actually adapt to the way humans experience sexuality. So the next thing that comes along is the Klein grid. And this is a variety of different facets of being a sexual being. And not just facets, but previous experience, what I'm presently doing in my life, and if all obstacles were removed, what I'd like to be doing. But all of this is asking the wrong question. When I ask you, what is your sexual orientation, the answer that you give me is probably to a different question. You're probably going to answer how your gender compares to the gender of the people you like to rub up against. And if you're pansexual or bisexual, that's a really weird specific thing, because that's less important than a lot of other measures. And our sexuality is a whole lot more than just bumping into each other. So we've got all these other facets. We've got our sensuality, our skin hunger, our desire for intimacy with other people. And then there are folks who are like, I'd really rather not bump into anyone, thank you. You're great, let's not do that. We have to have space for asexuality and aromanticism and the idea that that's not necessarily a thing I'm super interested in, but I'm perfectly fine anyway. And then those two things also, again, may or may not line up. The people who give me pants feels may or may not give me butterflies. When those things are the same, it's very convenient, but it's not always the case. And so it gives me a lot of different ways to express my experience. The people that I'm interested in, the way that I live my life, who I choose to spend my time with, who I choose to forge relationships with, who I buy a house with. And we have lots of different options about the way that we tell the world what we're into. Then we have this model which tells us where sexuality is in importance in our life. At the top we have hypersexuality. At the bottom we have asexuality. In the middle we have demisexuality. And this is the idea that I can say you're objectively attractive, but until we have a connection, I don't really want to bump into you. But eventually I might. This is the gender unicorn! And I just want to put this up 2 hours on him alone, but you just need to know that he exists and know that all of these things don't just exist on a spectrum, but they exist on a series of spectrums. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for coming, and we're gonna get naked.